for me, okay? You're watching the stream. On this show, we have shared many discussions about refugees and migrants. Today, we return to Greece, where on the island of Lesbos, refugees are appealing for help after their refugee settlement camp, the Moria camp, burned to the ground. This is how AJ Plus share their stories.
Please help us. We are human, we are no animal. It is hard to live it to Israel.
Ali Baba? Hey, problem?
They're saying that everybody that they are moved to the new camp, they just after one night they run away from that camp.
لا أنا مخيم جديد ما أروح على المخيم الجديد لأن المخيم الجديد هذا محصور مغلق يعني هذا المخيم إذا أنا بدي أفوت جوا سجن هذا نعتبره ما أعتبره مخيم.
Refugees in distress again. I know you have thoughts on this and experiences as well. Jump into the comment section if you're on YouTube, and you too can be part of today's show. Hello guests, it's good to have you. I wish it was under better circumstances. Ava, nice to see you. Tell everybody who you are.
I'm Eva Kose. I'm the Greece researcher at Human Rights Watch based in Athens.
Philippe, thank you for joining us here on the stream. Introduce yourself to our global audience.
Hello, I'm Philippe Leclerc, UNHCR representative in Greece for 5 years.
And if you watch Al Jazeera English, I know you'll know Stephanie Decker. Steph, introduce yourself for people who don't know you.
I'm a correspondent with Al Jazeera English, roving, and have been here on Lesbos for just over 2 weeks now.
Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you, guests. Good to see you. I was watching the news a couple of days ago, and there was a report that Steph was doing live, and it jumped out at me. It says so much about what is possible, what is the potential of refugees and migrants, potential rather than a problem. Here's Steph from a couple of days ago. Let's have a look.
Yeah. I want to thank you. I want to you're talking about the young generation here, and there's Abdel Hadi, he's 11 years old, speaks amazing English. You're 11, you're so mature. We were talking earlier. Tell me about what's it like? What's it been like for you?
You know, it's too bad. The situation is too hard. You know, when I sleep at night, I'm afraid that they will attack on us and they will burn down everything that we had. It's too hard. You know, they are thinking that we're animal, but we are not. The racist people. I don't want to stay here anymore with my family. I want to go to another country. I want to have a normal life. I want to have a better life. I want to go to school. Can you believe that I have never been to school?
But your English, how did you learn English? Your English is incredible.
I learned English from internet, just by phone, on the phone.
And that's a lot of people have been telling us here also they're trying to learn languages. One young gentleman from Afghanistan was saying, I'm sitting with some Somalis and some people from Syria and Iraq because I want to learn languages. You know, people here want a future, and I think we really have to remember that when we talk about the numbers of the 12,000 refugees that are here and they're trying to figure out where to go. You know, these are people with dreams, with hopes, trying to educate themselves. They had jobs, they fled their homes.
Abdul Hadi, he's not a little boy, he's a little man, Steph. How do you tell this story for the world? What is happening?
He is a little man, and I think it's always amazing when, that live, it was a half-hour show and they allowed it to run for 11 minutes, which never happens. And I think because people were so amazed to hear their stories in English, speaking directly to our audience. Of course, not everyone speaks English, and we were, I think, very lucky to find such eloquent, you had Mahdi next to him as well, eloquent young men, to see how their stories impacted people. I mean, I had people messaging me after that saying they were in tears. And Mahdi, who was he's 28 years old, sitting next to him, was also saying to us, which I think something was quite significant when we talk about the aid organizations and how people worry about the asylum seekers, migrants, refugees. He was like, I don't worry about my stomach. I don't worry about water or food. I worry about my mind and what the limbo of months, if not years on end in these camps with no idea what's going to happen to you actually does to my mind. And he says, I don't know if I'm ever going to be the same person again. And I think we also forget about the mental impact that this limbo has. A lot of these people don't even understand the legal processes that they're going through. So I think, it's very important to remember that these are individuals with tragedies, with stories, and with hopes.
Cody Ham is picking that up immediately on YouTube. Cody, thank you for watching today. The refugee crisis is a human crisis. Behind the statistics are people filled with unique life experiences and dreams for the future. There are mothers longing to return home, fathers yearning to work again, children searching for a childhood. That's poetic, Cody. Thank you. Philippe, I saw you standing in a new facility that hadn't existed a month ago, where you very quickly, not you, but the UNHCR very quickly found somewhere for those 12,000 refugees who'd had their camp destroyed to go. What is the situation like there now?
Well, as you said, the situation was desperate. A fire going through the whole Moria camp destroyed it all, and 12,000 people on the streets, on parking lots, without any place to go. Of course, most of them wanted to leave the island and go to Europe, go to the mainland Greece, but it could not happen immediately. What was important at the time was to provide some shelter for them, and indeed it was done by the Greek government with our support. Now there are 9,400 people living in that new camp in tents, just small tents, family tents, but at least they have a roof, a tent. They have some water, they have some food. But of course, as you have heard, most of them are seeking for solutions, and so that their dreams come true. And we always talk about the resilience of refugees. The boy you saw who has become a man. Most of the refugees I have seen throughout the 30 years I have been working with them all over the world, they want ordinary lives. They want lives with education. They want lives to continue their lives. And right now, we would not like this young boy to be a man. We would like him to enjoy his childhood, his youth, through being in that school. So what we need to do now with all the 9,400 people who are in that camp is to, as quickly as possible, look for their future, finding solutions, while bringing them today a roof, water, food, health, in particular in COVID times, where all the 9,400 people have been tested before entering. Many of them have been tested positive, 250. Others are in quarantine because they were close to the COVID people. So you have around 800 people in quarantine among the 9,400 people living in that camp. But again, all of them are only longing for one thing: solution.
Right. Let me just bring in Dean Mohammed. Dean Mohammed is the co-founder of Refugees for Refugees. Having the refugee voice in this conversation, in this situation is critical. This is what Dean told us earlier.
There are thousands of children that their parents are concerning about their future. There is not schooling for them. There is not education system for them still, and the time is just wasting. Their parents are really hopeful for the future of their children, and the only hope that they have is from European country to help them and to make their children's future. They're also humans. They're also families, their mothers, their parents, their children.
Ava, I'm hearing a hopeful voice, but a weary face. What would you tell us from the Human Rights Watch perspective about the prospects for the thousands of refugees who are now on Lesbos?
I think the issue and then the main worry with this new camp that many call Moria 2.0 is how temporary will it be? because we hear 5-6 months, which means that people will have to spend winter in these tents. It's important also to say that the location of this camp is at such place next to the sea that it's exposed to weather conditions. So this new facility has brought more uncertainty, more fear. We spoke with women who are survivors of gender-based violence, for example, and were in safe spaces in Moria before, and now are in the same areas than their perpetrators. People with disabilities, do they have access to toilets, to bathrooms? The uncertainty is the main thing that people are thinking about. How long are we going to stay here? How are we going to survive? Because the camp, at least for now, is very basic.
Steph, go ahead.
Yes, I agree. I mean, the first time we saw the camp, we had the same question. It is so exposed to the elements. It's right on the shores. It's a very windy island. Winter is coming. And I think that's the key issue, is how temporary is it? I mean, Philippe, even the UNHCR has described it as an emergency camp. I think there is a consensus that this is not sustainable in the long term. But then the question is, where do you put a new camp? We know that there is backlash also from the local community when it comes to that. So you have a very complicated situation. We've been speaking to islanders as well who, you know, this is a divided island these days. And they've been saying, some of them, that they blame the European Union for allowing this situation to get to this point. I mean, I think even us here are having this discussion only because Moria burnt to the ground, because otherwise it would have been a continuing reality that certainly these frontline countries are having to deal with. So now I think it is important that we are discussing it again, and long-term solutions are needed. I think if you look at, I agree with Eva, it's going to be a special disaster.
Steph, you're breaking up for a moment. We will get back that clear audio because you're making a really good point. But Philippe, I know you can pick up immediately. Yeah. You know what Steph is saying. Go ahead.
Well, nobody will regret Moria. It was 5 times overcrowded. And there are many other camps like this which still exist. On Samos, Vati, 11 times the population are living in extremely bad conditions. So it's for all these camps that the situation has to improve so that solutions are provided more quickly than they have been in the last 4 years. So this is our priority, to push both the Greek government as well as the European Union to find solutions so that people have hope again and can trust the procedures that are put in place, both the refugees themselves, the migrants, as well as the local communities. There's a total lack of trust today among the people of the islands that have shown so much solidarity previously. You remember when in 2015 and 2016, so many people were coming, and we were showing and seeing all these acts of solidarity of the islanders on their islands. Today, trust is not there with their government, with the EU policy, and these two, with our support and the civil society as well, have to come back with a decent and human-based response, and not what we have seen in the last 4 years.
Philippe, I have to share with you some of the comments that people are making as they're watching, and all of you guests, Ava and Steph as well. Rosy Cheeks, this is just so sad, and we all need a little more compassion towards our fellow humans. Danny Boy, Gamoose, the entire world must redesign a new refugee concept. This is appalling. Darlene, this is very sad and disgusting that these people believing that they were going to go somewhere, that they could live freely. This is unbelievable. So just after the fire destroyed the Moria camp, which Philippe, you were saying, was a horrible camp anyway, this is what the Prime Minister of Greece said. Yes, Ava, let me share what the Prime Minister of Greece said, and then you can come right off the back of that, because I'm wondering if we're seeing these concrete reactions that he said that he would provide. All right, so here on my laptop, right here on my laptop. As soon as the damages are fully assessed and in full coordination with the European Commission, we will undertake concrete initiatives. Our priority remains the health and safety of the island's residents, as well as all the migrants and refugees. That was the undertaking from the Prime Minister of Greece. Ava, go ahead.
Well, talking about concrete initiatives, just as we talk, the government has initiated procedures to shut down one of the volunteer-run facilities on the islands that hosts some of the most vulnerable people, people with Down syndrome, cancer patients. It's called PICPA. And the government, instead of investing in this kind of facilities, has announced that it is shutting it down by October 15. So my question is, where are these solutions? And why closing a facility that is working perfectly, that is a safe haven for people, and transferring them to a basic camp?
I agree very much with Eva on this, if I may, because I think it's very important that the government has the right priorities. The right priorities right now is to ensure that those who are in need and those who are the most vulnerable have dedicated shelters for them. You have PICPA, you have Karatepe, you have Metadrasi Center, who are hosting the most vulnerable among the people who were in Moria. And this does not need to close in any way before solutions, dignified solutions, are found for anybody. So we also advocate for the government not to close any of these solidarity initiatives that the people of the islands have put in place that are so needed while solutions are being organized. So the 4 shelters have to remain, those who are outside of the new camp.
I'm going to share
Ava
something.
And also, Femi, to say...
Yeah.
Sorry,
Ava
just
first,
to
Stephanie
add
second.
quickly. Yes, that at the same time, the government on the mainland is shutting down hotel facilities that were hosting asylum seekers. Of course, we're saying that mainland facilities are at capacity and people cannot be transferred, but this is not true. They are shutting down since the beginning of June hotels that were hosting asylum seekers, emptying them and shutting them down. We believe that people who are on Lesbos, as well as in other islands, by prioritizing vulnerable groups, should be transferred to the mainland and to those facilities. And these facilities shouldn't shut down.
Steph, go ahead.
And the European Commission should ensure that the hotels remain. 5,000 places are there. Next week, we are discussing with the government the priority transfer of many of the people who are in Lesbos, but also on other islands in very bad conditions, so that they benefit from hotels which can host them, while waiting for others. Not all will benefit from relocation to other European countries, but right now, the first step is to ensure that as many people as possible, and that we have counted more than 2,500 people who are currently on the island of Lesbos who have no hurdle to leave for the mainland.
All right, Philippe, so what I'm hearing and what we're hearing right now, audience, is these conversations that often happen behind closed doors. We hear the tensions. Ava's bringing up the tensions. Philippe and UNHCR are in a very awkward situation because Greece is the host. What are you going to do and say to push the host?
Yeah, let me say something that follows on from Ava, is that you may think if someone has asylum and they go to Athens, there is very little support. People end up really on their own with no help, no integration policies. How many people we've spoken to and also end up on the streets homeless. So the problem is every step of the way. I was talking to a young lawyer who is works for one of the NGOs, providing free aid, legal aid, because the appeal process also, the refugees need a lawyer, it's complicated. But he basically broke down into tears. He's a young man, I think he wasn't older than maybe end 20s, early 30s, when he said that when the people he represented got asylum, and this is the dream, right? He was describing one lady from Congo who was crying. She was so happy. This is everything she had hoped for. He said it broke him to then tell her how difficult the path forward was going to be for her, and made her cry. And he literally welled up into tears and began crying because it broke him so much. So I think it's very good to say I think tomorrow, actually, there's a ferry leaving here in Lesbos with around 700 people who have had asylum granted. The question is, what kind of infrastructure, what kind of help helps these people? The Greek government these days says, well, if they have asylum, they're independent and they're on their own. Well, these are people who've been languishing in camps for months and years on end. They need help. And that help is very difficult for them to get, even if they have the means and the money to, for example, rent an apartment, which is, we're talking the top of the top here. They then need to get a tax number. And if they can't get that, if they haven't had a permanent address, well, So I think we can talk widely, but the practicality of this issue is so complicated that even if you're granted asylum, you're still faced with massive challenges.
But Steph, what isn't complicated? I'm going to share a story that you put on Twitter, which again leapt out at me. You have this ability to find those stories that really they get you. This is Samira from Afghanistan. Have a look here on my laptop. She wanted me to take this picture and asked to send her message to the world. Samira, we're doing that. Steph, thank you. And then on this note, it says, everyone in a European country, we have very need to your help. If you love human, please transfer us from Greece. Greece government is no good. It goes on. It is not perfect English, but she has learnt to write English, and I think you hear that appeal. The European Union Commission also were hearing and being pressurised to come up with some kind of migration pact. Here is what the chief of the EU Commission said just last week. Have a listen.
This package reflects a fair and reasonable balance between responsibility and solidarity among member states. We all share the benefits. We all share the burden. This package also reflects a very pragmatic and realistic approach.
Ava, are you convinced? She seems to be the cynic in this conversation.
So on Wednesday, the European Commission published the so-called migration pact. We all expected that there would be lessons learned from what happened in Moria, but instead we see the same language reproduced. We hear about border protection, about cooperation with third countries, even about, in the context of solidarity that other countries could bring to Greece, we even hear about return sponsorship. So instead of showing genuine solidarity and taking people from Greece to another member state, a country could just sponsor the deportation of people back to their countries. It's just appalling. And we're missing all the sense of the words. What is solidarity anymore?
I want to bring in Martha Russo, because Martha Russo is from the International Rescue Committee. When we told her we were doing this story, she took her camera and sent us this report. Let's have a look.
I'm here in the emergency temporary camp that was built after the fires that engulfed Moria 2 weeks ago. The first thing to really ensure here is water and sanitation, so people can actually wash themselves and keep safe from COVID-19. The second thing that we would ask is to ensure that there's protection for the lots of vulnerable people, people with disabilities, very young children, single parents, survivors of gender-based violence. And the third thing is really European solidarity and ensure that this will not be a permanent solution.
International Rescue Committee, they're very, very clear on what they need, what refugees need. Philippe, I was on your Twitter feed and I found solutions that are possible. I want to show people, because as they're watching you on YouTube, they're very depressed about what is happening on the island of Lesbos. So this is Teti. The Bakri family fled Syria but found a new home in the city of Heraklion in Crete. And the neighbours treat them like every other family. They're not in a camp. They don't have terrible conditions. They're living amongst people, like people, as you should be. Moving on, relocation is a humane and concrete example of intra-European solidarity. You need to see, coming from Greece, 927 people in the past year, where they went to, all the different countries they went to. Philippe, this is not Mission Impossible. What is stopping more of this from happening? Very briefly.
And this is not Mission Impossible. As you say, we see concretely on the island of Crete, which is a big island in Heraklion, you were mentioning this family. We see refugees in Karditsa, another middle town of Greece, which was hit by floods, and where refugees are helping the Greek people.
We're right at the end of the show. I'm going to give you the last word.
So let's take them by their word. Solidarity and responsibility. This is what we need, but in a concrete way, meaning that integration has to happen in Greece, relocation has to happen in Europe, But let's be responsible and be sure that also some returns will have to take place, either voluntary or forced for those not in need of international protection.
Thank you, Stephanie. Really appreciate you. This is a difficult topic. I appreciate you, YouTube, as well, for jumping in on this conversation. To be continued. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.